there were dramatic scenes in Hamburg as the G20 summit began. Following a night of clashes with the police, thousands of people took to the streets of the German city to express their anger over the 2 days of talks. A number of police officers and emergency personnel were injured as the rally turned violent, authorities said. Fires were lit and rocks hurled in an effort to disrupt the summit. At least 30 protesters were arrested. Some called the demonstration "Welcome to Hell." Many attendees were from anti-Trump and anti-capitalist groups. The latter say they are angry at the potential cost to the city of the cleanup following the summit.
President Trump experienced quite the humbling moment at the G20's annual family photo. As the world leaders filed in, it became clear Trump wouldn't be the center of attention in this photo, or even left of center. Rather, both Trump and French President Macron had been relegated to the fringes of the photo's frame. Well, there's no shade here. He's at the edge because he's one of the newest leaders in the photo. He'll get closer to the center over time, so Trump won't have to resort to any sort of shoving, like in his NATO picture. By the way, notably separated from the president was Vladimir Putin. Later, Putin and Trump did come face to face, Trump calling it an honor to meet him and that they had, quote, very good talks.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. President Putin and I have been discussing various things, and I think it's going very well. We've had some very, very good talks. We're going to have a talk now, and obviously that will continue. But we look forward to a lot of very positive things happening for Russia, for the United States, and for everybody concerned. And it's an honor to be with you.
Your Excellency, Mr. President, we spoke over the phone with you several times on very important bilateral and international issues. Well, phone conversation is never enough, definitely. But if we want to have a positive development in bilaterals and be able to resolve most acute international policy issues, definitely we need personal meetings. And I'm delighted to be able to meet you personally, Mr. President, and I hope, as you have said, our meeting will yield positive results in the future of the US.
Thank you very much.
Mr. President, will you raise the election hacking?
Out this way. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
On Friday, U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin reached an agreement on curbing violence in Syria during their sit-down at the G20 meeting in Germany. Tillerson, who sat in on the discussion between the two leaders, told reporters the ceasefire was a defined agreement and could be a precursor to further cooperation in Syria. Tillerson said, "This is our first indication of the U.S. and Russia being able to work together in Syria." A ceasefire will come into effect in this de-escalation zone starting at noon Damascus time on July 9th.
Mr. Trump, do you still want Mexico to pay for the wall?
While seated next to Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto during the G20 summit of leading world powers in Germany, U.S. President Donald Trump told reporters he still wants to make good on one of his signature campaign promises.
I will build a great, great wall on our southern border, and I will have Mexico pay for that wall.
It's unclear if Peña Nieto responded to Trump's most recent comment. Video released by the White House cuts off before the moment in question. But Peña Nieto has previously made it clear his country won't foot the bill for the massive project, and it's been a big point of contention between the two leaders. The last time Trump and Peña Nieto met in person was August of last year, when Trump stopped in Mexico City during his presidential campaign. Peña Nieto was supposed to visit the US after Trump took office in January, but he canceled their meeting after he and Trump exchanged some heated words about the barrier's construction. Estimates say the border barrier will cost billions of dollars, but the project seems to be moving along. According to US Customs and Border Protection, prototypes should be built by September.
Dude, get your head in the game. You're representing the U.S. at the G20. That's former Hillary Clinton campaign chairman John Podesta firing off tweets after President Donald Trump said this. Everyone here is talking about why John Podesta refused to give the DNC server to the FBI and the CIA. Disgraceful. Trump was likely referring to how the DNC initially refused to allow the FBI direct access to its servers after the cyber attack. Podesta tweeted off a series of responses. On a cross-country road trip with my wife, pulled in for a pit stop in East Fairmont, West Virginia to see that our whack job POTUS is tweeting about me at the G20. Get a grip, man. The Russians committed a crime when they stole my emails to help you get elected president. Maybe you might find a way to mention that to President Putin.
After months of reporting on alleged Russian meddling in the US election using unnamed sources, now CNN seems to be changing its attitude towards anonymity. Case in point, one of the channel's own political analysts now says people do not have the right to stay anonymous. It was in response to the backlash that the network faced for threatening to reveal the man behind that little viral meme featuring President Trump wrestling a CNN logo. Caleb Mopin's got more.
CNN now thinks that we, the people, do not have the right to be anonymous. This is how Kirsten Powers, their political analyst, explained it in a tweet.
People do not have a right to stay anonymous so they can spew their racist, misogynist, homophobic garbage.
Now, that's an interesting argument coming from a network that's been running stories about Trump based on unnamed sources for months.
Based on anonymous sources.
According to this source who spoke on the condition of anonymity.
Anonymous sources are the basis of most truthful reporting.
Oftentimes we do have to gather information using anonymous sources. Say, can I use your name? And they say no. Can I use you as an anonymous source, a source familiar with the matter? They say yes. And then we report the information on the air.
We've heard CNN use this phrase so much, it's actually spawned a number of online memes. Sure, CNN protects their online sources, but the way they see it, if you post something online that they consider to be offensive, they have the right to reveal your personal information to the public, something that could actually put a person in harm's way.
Trump Tower. We told you about this briefly, beefing up security after a man armed with 2 throwing knives was busted trying to get in. Authorities say that Adams Vientes from New York City claimed that he was a New York senator and that he wanted to see the president's daughter, Ivanka. He was wearing a bulletproof vest and he had fake IDs. Vientes now undergoing a psychiatric evaluation.
Sparking an hours-long standoff, a man who claimed to have a bomb that could take out the room barricaded himself inside a suburban Atlanta bank Friday. The event forced the police to bust through a brick wall of the building and later ended with the suspect's death. Cobb County Police Chief Mike Register did not offer details Friday of how the man died. Shortly after, TV footage showed a military-type vehicle smashing its way through the wall, raining bricks onto its hood. 2 people were freed. It was not clear if they escaped through the wall opening.
The thing I want to show you here are the holes in the walls on the left and the right-hand side. So if we look over there, you can see a pretty distinct hole over there that's been bashed through the wall, easily enough space for a man. And then over on the other side, leading through to the neighbour's house, it's now been blocked off, but you can again see another hole there. Can you ask the ladies why they did this? Why were these holes made?
They make us do this on purpose. They just come to draw on the wall so they can use it as a cover from the airstrike to go in and out.
What would have happened if you hadn't made those holes that they drew on the wall?
They will blow up the house.
Or they'll kill the people inside. And we've heard this story repeatedly from people that they were ordered to do things by ISIS. Interestingly, the house that they fled to over the road was then occupied by ISIS, and they had to look after them. And these stories are repeated time and time again throughout this whole neighborhood, throughout this whole city.
At least 23 Egyptian soldiers were killed when 2 suicide car bombs tore through army checkpoints in North Sinai province on Friday. Security sources said it was one of the bloodiest assaults on security forces for months. Militants are waging an insurgency in the rugged, thinly populated area of the Sinai Peninsula and have killed hundreds of soldiers and police since 2013, when the military ousted Islamist President Mohamed Morsi after mass protest against his rule. The 2 cars blew up as they passed through 2 checkpoints close to each other on a road outside of Rafah on the border with the Gaza Strip. No group claimed responsibility for the attacks. The security sources said another 26 soldiers were injured in Friday's attacks.
The FBI and Homeland Security Department have issued a new warning to American energy companies amid a cybersecurity threat to nuclear facilities. They say foreign hackers have been targeting U.S. plants by looking for vulnerabilities in the companies that operate them. CBS News Justice and Homeland Security correspondent Jeff Begays has the latest on the threat.
The frequency and the intensity of these cyber attacks have escalated recently, and that's what prompted federal officials to issue the warning late last month. Among the companies targeted by hackers is the Wolf Creek Nuclear Operating Corporation, that's in Kansas. U.S. officials say the hackers were able to penetrate the business side of the nuclear facility, but officials insist that there was no threat to public safety or to operations at the plant. Last month, the FBI and Department of Homeland Security issued a joint report warning businesses to watch out for specific types of cyber attack attempts by hackers. There was a similar report on Russian malicious cyber activity in December. In the latest incidents, officially we're being told that it's too early to attribute the attacks to a specific country. However, former officials familiar with Russian cyber capabilities say they have to be at or close to the top of the list of potential suspects.
Japan says North Korea's nuclear and missile development has reached, quote, a new level of threat. According to Tokyo-based newspaper Yomiuri Shimbun on Friday, the Japanese government sees the North Korean threat having escalated since last year, when Japan's 2017 defense white paper described it as, quote, a grave and urgent threat. This year's white paper specifically notes that North Korea's ballistic missiles have improved in terms of range and attack capabilities. It introduced North Korean missiles launched in February and May as new types using solid fuel. And the one launched in May is having a lofted launch angle, flying higher than Japanese missiles. Japan is set to add further explanations about the recently launched missile, confirmed by U.S. authorities as an ICBM.
The UN Security Council condemnation of North Korea's long-range missile launch was blocked by Russia. Moscow's UN envoy took issue over the wording of the statement, saying there's insufficient evidence to classify Pyongyang's latest missile as an ICBM.
According to the information from the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, based on the objective and technology-based monitoring of the situation, it has been established that the parameters and data regarding the target of the missile are in line with the tactical criteria of mid-range ballistic missiles.
Security Council statements must have the approval of all 15 members, and Russia said it had proposed amendments to the current draft.
UNESCO is stepping into one of the world's most stubborn conflicts, and it isn't coming out unscathed. The Palestinians are asking it to declare Hebron and its Tomb of the Patriarchs endangered World Heritage Sites, but they're getting pushed back from Israel and the U.S.
The Tomb of the Patriarchs is a historical Islamic site, but Israel also declares that it's an Israeli site because it's tied to Abraham. The cave or tomb, which they call a holy site, is considered sacred to the Jews, which is also why they're expanding in Hebron and supporting the settlers living here. It's an important decision.
The Palestinians argue that Hebron and the tomb of Abraham and his family are at risk because of the Israeli occupation. But the U.S. ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, argues they're under no immediate threat. And Israel says UNESCO shouldn't be turned into a political organization. Hebron is home to more than 200,000 Palestinians and 500 Israeli settlers. The tomb is located in the old city of Hebron.
On Friday, Israel decided to cut its funding to the United Nations after the UN Cultural Organization declared an ancient shrine in the occupied West Bank a Palestinian heritage site. UNESCO designated Hebron and the two adjoined shrines at its heart a Palestinian World Heritage Site in danger. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called that another delusional UNESCO decision and ordered that $1 million be diverted from Israel's UN funding. The religious significance of the city has made it a focal point for settlers who are determined to expand the Jewish presence there.
Please, I ask you, don't push.
Thousands of migrants living on the streets of Paris have been evicted. As dawn broke on Friday, dozens of police and white vans moved in to clear the area. Up to 2,500 men and women had set up temporary homes on the sidewalks in the north of the French capital. Many of them had fled war or strife in countries as far away as Sudan, Eritrea and Afghanistan.
The idea of this operation is first to get the migrants off the streets, but it is also to give people shelter in the right conditions. Shelter both in terms of food and accommodation, but also where needed, on demand, medical assessments and medical care.
It's thought about 100 migrants a day were arriving here. There were concerns about the camps being a security and public health risk for both residents and locals. Escorted onto buses, the migrants will now be taken to temporary lodgings like gym buildings. Paris City Hall had set up 2 new centres to register and temporarily house migrants. Despite that, the numbers at this street camp had still swollen. Local authorities have also reported a recent rise in the number of migrants roaming around the northern port city of Calais. A sprawling illegal camp there was razed to the ground last November. Its inhabitants were dispatched to other parts of the country.
Amid measles outbreaks and drops in vaccinations, the French government is making more vaccines mandatory. French Prime Minister Edouard Philippe recently said young children will have to get 8 new vaccines starting next year. Vaccines for diphtheria, tetanus, and polio are already a must in France. 8 more, which state health authorities already recommend, will be added to that list in 2018. Many French doctors support these mandatory vaccinations. Back in June, 200 doctors and hospital administrators publicly petitioned for the new policy. In his announcement, the Prime Minister said, quote, "Diseases that we believe to be eradicated are developing once again." He referenced the European measles outbreak, which has killed 10 children in France since 2008. The World Health Organization says the disease is rapidly spreading throughout Europe because of drops in immunization coverage. France's new policy follows in the footsteps of Italy's. In May, Italy's government said children must be vaccinated for 12 diseases before they can enroll in public school. The country's health minister hopes the mandate will send a, quote, strong message to the public about the importance of vaccines.
CNN has reported that gonorrhea is becoming harder and, in some cases, impossible to treat with antibiotics. Teodora Wee, a human reproduction specialist at the World Health Organization, said in a news release The bacteria that cause gonorrhea are particularly smart. Every time we use a new class of antibiotics to treat the infection, the bacteria evolve to resist them. 3 superbugs, bacteria that cannot be killed by the best available drug, were detected in Japan, France, and Spain. Each year, about 78 million people worldwide are infected with gonorrhea. In the United States, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention estimates there are 820,000 new gonorrhea infections each year.
Microsoft is laying off thousands of workers in its sales and marketing departments as part of a major restructuring plan. The cuts will be less than 10% of the company's sales force. Roughly 75% of the cuts will be outside the U.S. Specific numbers have not been released, but 3,000 to 4,000 is the ballpark figure bandied around by U.S. media outlets. A spokesperson for Microsoft said the move is to align the right resources for the right customer at the right time. Microsoft reportedly aims to expand its cloud business, shifting from the company's traditional licensing of its Office programs to computer users.
Just a few weeks after the minimum wage in St. Louis went up, it's coming right back down. The city's minimum wage will soon decrease from $10 an hour to $7.70 an hour, the standard rate for Missouri. The wage hike came from a 2015 St. Louis ordinance. But business groups challenged the ordinance, which led to a 2-year legal battle that ended up in the Missouri Supreme Court. The city eventually won, and its minimum wage workers started seeing bigger paychecks in May. But then the Missouri General Assembly passed a bill that requires local governments to stick with the state's minimum wage. And Missouri Governor Eric Greitens has decided to let the bill become a law without his signature. Greitens argued the wage increase would kill jobs and take money out of people's pockets. But St. Louis Mayor Lyda Krewson has called the move to roll back the city's minimum wage a setback for working families. The new law is set to go into effect August 28th.
The restaurant Pizza.com, which is located in the bustling city of Multan, Pakistan, has begun using a robotic waitstaff to serve hungry customers. The bots were created by engineer Osama Jafari after he stumbled onto video footage of similar robotic servers at a restaurant establishment in China. According to Jafari, the total cost for each of the 3 waitress robots, whose names are Annie, Jenny, and Rabia, was around $6,000. While speaking with local media this week, Jafari says he hopes to deploy more robotic waiters at other establishments in the near future.
Maybe it's all those Terminator movies, sci-fi novels, and post-apocalyptic video games, but it just makes sense to be wary of super-intelligent AI. Thankfully, 2 major firms in the study of artificial intelligence have convened to work on ways to keep AIs from tackling problems improperly or unpredictably. OpenAI, a group founded by techno-entrepreneur Elon Musk, and DeepMind, the team behind the new reigning Go champ, AlphaGo, have teamed up to find ways of ensuring an AI solves problems to human desirable standards. While it's still faster sometimes to let an AI solve problems on its own, the team up found that humans need to step in to add constraints upon constraints to train the AI to handle a task in an expected fashion.
3 days of heavy rain fed by Typhoon Nanmandol caused massive floods. Parts of the southern island of Kyushu were hit by nearly 600 millimeters of rain in just 2 days. That's nearly double the average in July. At least 500 people are believed to be stranded, cut off by floods and landslides. As the rain approached, 54,000 Japanese were evacuated from their homes.
I see news about disasters on TV, but it's unbelievable that this has happened so close to us. It's really awful. This kind of disaster never happened around here.
At least 12,000 emergency personnel are helping in the rescue and relief effort. Helicopters are essential because roads are cut and bridges washed away. More rain is expected on Saturday, but not as heavy. The government's warning residents to stay alert. The engagement of Japan's Princess Mako was supposed to take place here in Tokyo on Saturday, but because of these deadly floods in the south, it's been postponed.